This is Ben Lang-Henriks of GenieEye Software with Getting Data from Domino with Exciton Boost REST API. Today we're going to look at the CurbAppeal database, which has home listings in various cities. See, this view is sorted by city and state. If we go in and look, we can see there are a number of fields. Show a photograph in a rich text field of the house, and then we have price and how many bedrooms and all that kind of stuff. And then we have a couple of text fields for the directions and descriptions, a couple of rich text fields for the bullet points about the house, and a computed image of the realtor. So now we're going to look at how to get this information out, but the first thing we need to do is go into the Exciton configuration database and make sure we're allowed to get it out, because Exciton is very careful about securing your data. So we need to note that this is an Exciton enabled database. We're going to let it be discoverable, and we're going to make sure the REST API is enabled for this database. We're going to make sure that a form, these are the listing form, is the right form, and the view, the listings by location view is also REST enabled. All right, having done all that, we can go to Postman where we can send requests. And if we send one on just the core services, basically, we can see that REST is enabled, and we can see how to get to following HateOAS principles. We can see how we can get to the documents and the views and all. So now we're going to look at the first step that we defined, which is how do we get the views, find out what views are available, and pull data in. And we do that. There's only one view that's available, as we saw in our configuration database. If we clicked on that, we could essentially follow it. That's how you would normally follow it. We're going to go ahead and do it separately like this. If you view that, it's a JSON result, and each of the columns from the view is represented, as well as metadata above. And there's at href allows you to get to the individual document, sorted by city. So the first thing we're going to do as the next step is we're going to filter this view. Let's filter it by that city and state. And now we could normally just put a question mark key equals whatever value, but because there's a comma in there, it's better to put it in as a header. You set the X key value, set it to chagrin false, and then we can check on which elements of the view are there, and it's an array with just one document because there was only one listing in Chagrin Falls. If we want to look at what happens if we have multiple listings in a city, we'll go to Beechwood, because I noticed that Beechwood had a number of different listings. And there you can see that we have Beechwood. We have a number of listings. So let's look at that first listing. And again, following the principle that you can follow the link, you could go to the document and the unique ID for that. And if we do that, the documents collection and the unit, then if we look here, we're going to see all the items or all the allowed items, if you can actually restrict and say which items are allowed. It's got the rich text fields as high fidelity HTML. It's got things like the street address and the state. Up above, it's got the city. You'll notice those are all separate items, which will be important in a minute. So let's say that we want to get, as our next step, we want to get selected document fields from that document, not just everything, but only some. And we're going to map some of them to different names because they're necessary under different names. So we set the metadata as false, so we don't get so much that. And we set the items value to street address, bedrooms. Full is the item name. But we're going to save it as if it were bathrooms, and half we're going to save as half baths, and then photo is the rich text field with the photo. So if we look here, we've got the street address, the bedrooms, the bathrooms, the half baths, and the photo is an HTML rendering of that rich text field. Now we're going to go a little bit further and say, what if we want to create our own fields using Note's formula language? And in that case, it's easier to use the X items list rather than put it on the URL. And here we have street address plus comma plus city plus state plus comma plus state equals address. We also were going to say with the rich text field, we're just going to get the image. So right there you've got the address, and it is formatted. So that was Notes formula language. It could be very complex, could be all kinds of things. And the image, you'll notice, is just the image and not the rest of the rich text. Not that it matters much in this case. So let's go by the view, and we can do the same sort of thing from a view instead of going by the document. So let's add a couple of items. Just the column 1, column 3 are the bullet point items about the listing. And we're going to set this key value to Beechwood, Ohio again. So what we now get is all the elements in the view with only the minimal metadata, with the column values, and then the 2 rich text fields. And we get it all from the view. We don't actually have to go to the individual documents. So that if there are multiple listings, we can just go and retrieve them that way. Notice if we just change to the description field, which is actually a text field, we would get the same column values, but then below that we'd have the description, which is that text value. So it makes it very easy to say, get the things from the view that have formulas and whatever, but just get a couple of extra. So we need to find out which rich text items are in here. This is for the customer example we have. So we're going to see, and there are 4 rich text items. The photo and the column 2 isn't really used, so column 1 and column 3 are in the table. Now let's pull in just one of those, which we could do following the link. There you've got the metadata, and column 1 is the HTML, and there it is as JSON. But what if we want that as an HTML page? All we have to do is take the accept, which defaults to JSON, but goes in usually */*, and change the accept header to text/HTML. That will tell it that we need to return HTML, and there we get the whole page, the doc type and everything. It treated as if it's a page, even though it's only a single rich text field. If we wanted to preview that, we can see there's the bullet list that shows up in that part of the table. But when we're pulling pieces in like that, we usually want them as fragments, not as a whole HTML page. If we just add $fragment equals true, and we're still doing text/HTML, then what we're going to get is the same rich text field, but just the HTML for the rich text, and CSS would be inline and all that kind of thing. Preview it is going to look the same. Now, the next task is to get the graphic chunk with the link. And so if we look at the photo and we add the /chunks and /graphic1 and set to fragment and do this text HTML, we could get, this is just the image link, which we could then embed very easily into a mobile application. And that works a lot of the time when you're able to get back to the server, but it also means that you have to parse it out if you want to know any of the individual pieces of this. You want to figure out where to fit it on the page or something like that. By changing it just a little bit, by taking the items off, setting the metadata to false, and then setting an X items list, we can actually pull in various features, the format and the offset, which is what you use in that link, the height and width, but there are a number of others that we could pull in. And we're going to return this as a JSON value so that our JavaScript could format that link if it wanted, but it could also figure out heights and widths and where to put it, and you can do fancy things with it. And our last task is to get that same graphic, but we don't want to link back to the server. We want all the data down on the mobile device, and so for a mobile app, for instance. So we're going to return it by setting that data images equals max. We're going to set it as a data URI. And that way, well, it looks like a bunch of stuff. What it really means is that the image is pulled inline and we can just use it as an image, but we don't have to go to the server to get it. So that's how we get Domino data with Exciton Boost REST API. Thank you.